Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, 20th of July, 2023. We're going to do some current market analysis. My name's Anil. Do remember this presentation is for education purposes only and not intended as investment advice. I do require you to read the risk disclaimer, pause the video, pause whatever, when you're on replay, make sure you understand it. Trading is risky, and you should know what you're doing. A bit about myself, those of you who are regular viewers, look at my previous videos. I've talked about my background in the past. I want to get straight really to analysis and, just reminder of how to access the free plus Zenfinex tools. I know some of you have already done that. I'm hoping you're finding it useful, and, do drop me an email if you need any assistance or guidance. There's videos on this portal on how to use these tools anyway. So let's just jump straight to charts. I think that's what everybody's interested in. Right, we did some gold analysis on Tuesday, I believe, and we were bumping up against these levels, and we had drawn in some channels, etc. And I'll do the top-down approach again in a minute. But we were watching this, I think, probably from an hourly perspective, right during the last webinar, in real time. And we were talking about this level here being extremely important, this level, which put the cursor on it, this whole region here, where, I think we counted 6 or 7 times, 8 times, where price tried to get above this level here. And we said that rather than looking for a reversal, we were looking for a breakout. We were strong on, strong on gold, and literally after the live stream webinar, it went straight up. We've got a really nice risk to reward there, and it's just using the same kind of approach that I do every single day, and I'm going to do that again. But what is interesting is with this particular trade is that, it hit levels that we had pre-drawn. So we'd mapped out our ideas before the trade and figured out, where it could potentially go to. And we'll do the same. We'll do the same every single day. So gold is going to go sideways probably for a little bit now. We'll check some news first before I get too stuck into charts. I want to just see what's going on. We'll look at the British pound. I think we had some better than expected. Let's put out the hourly time frame. It's better than. Let's have a look at that, and then we can talk about how it impacted price as well. Went into our area here, came down to the other area, and look, it should be astonishing to you guys that how these levels work, and we'll look into how to sort of identify these levels a bit more in a second. But let's just have a look at yesterday's news. So we had some inflation figures out, better than expected, had a impact on the British pound, gaps down, and really it's been sort of coming down since, really. So we also talked about the dollar index as being a key factor. I think, in fact, if I just go to the dollar index quickly, you'll see how all these threads are put together for a trade idea, right? So what we were looking at is what was the news upcoming. We were looking at how the dollar has fallen through some important levels. And that's how we build our story. That's how we build our trades, basically. So it's a combination of technicals, levels, and any kind of high impact news that may be coming. So let's just have a quick look at, and I'm literally going to have a quick look at it, the dollar index. Let's see, where is that? I think I've got rid of my dollar index. That's a pity, but we talked about it, I think, on Tuesday's video, where how big an impact it was having. Let's just stick with this for now. And better than expected inflation numbers, i.e., inflation dropping in the UK, had an impact on the British pound against the US dollar. And so, this is a pretty cool tool. I'll see if I have time to just run through them. Remember, these are free tools. You can just look at them any single time, just register and you'll get access, where we get some trade ideas on different currencies and some technical views, again, on on potential trade setups. We just pick just the popular major FX pairs. We'll get consolidation on the USD Swiss, British pound short. Again, we talked about that with the news that came out, had an impact. So the point I'm really trying to make is all these things thread together. So when you're taking a trade or when you're looking for a setup, make sure you consider all the factors. Is there any important news coming up? Is there any important levels coming up, whether daily or weekly? And all these can help you, get a sort of bias, long or short, strength or weakness. And from that, we'll start looking at how we can, build trades upon that. So, I don't think I'll have time to look at this too much, but let's just go through my process again. And again, anybody who has any questions, please ask, and I will happily, show you or do my top-down approach from everything. So let's actually have a look at the British pound. Let's get rid of everything first. Right. So let's just see what happened yesterday. So this is from a 4-hourly perspective. So let's get rid of everything. I mean, I still think this level here will be important, but let's see if we can pick that up again. I'm going to get rid of everything that I do every single time when I'm looking for a trade setup. It only takes a few minutes, and the importance of this is that as news develops, let me see, I've got a question here. Yeah, I'll look at US oil in a second, but let me just run through. In fact, why don't I just do US oil right now? So same principle, right? So let's start with the longest time frame we can get on our charts. And we'll start, putting some important levels down, and then we'll put smaller time frame levels down. It ensures, for me anyway, that if we are coming up to sort of weekly levels and daily levels, that I pay attention to them. So that's the weekly levels. And what we're doing is we're starting to frame the market. We're starting to see where the outer boundaries are and how those boundaries can affect our trades, whether they are used as stops, targets, or entry points. So we can see here from a daily perspective, and we'll just follow the price action down, right? So we saw price coming down, reaction. If I squeeze this up a little bit, might make it a bit clearer. Right, clearly this gap is to do with the Ukraine situation, and since then, so it went to the top. And again, incidentally, it didn't go much higher than its previous highs, and then when it did fall down, you could argue that there's a big difference there, but essentially it's in that same region and came down, came down, came down. So that's why we're framing the market. Now we're going to start putting some day levels in, and the day levels of I just put the most obvious ones, right? We can see in the last few days that price tried to get above. Let's see what that level is. It's sort of 77-ish, probably a little bit higher than that. And I'm going to move this down a little bit more, because what I'm doing, I'm going back in time and seeing how this price was affected. We can see here, look, it's support, came back, resistance, bounced off here, broke through, resistance. So clearly this level is important, right? And if we start looking at where the reactions were, particularly if we're looking for a short-term trading perspective, right? We can see here that 73-ish, 74-ish prices bounced, 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 bouncing off support, resistance, 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 broke through, hit this previous level, came back, retested, and tried to get back up to that sort of high here. And I'm talking really just from a pure technical perspective. Obviously, there are things that impact oil prices, and supply and demand is one of the biggest things. And usually, the best thing to look at if you're an oil trader is on Wednesdays. They have the storage reports and usage and what have you in North America or the Americas, and really useful. A lot of oil traders pay attention to that, and maybe I'll have a quick look at that in a second. But we can see here, right, that we're framing the market. We're looking at important turning points, and we'll now drill down to the 4-hourly. And as I keep repeating, I do this regardless of what the instrument, whether it's grains, whether it's I'm sure wheat has gone through the roof because of things that are happening in Ukraine. I did trade wheat a long time ago. The beauty about trading wheat futures contracts, a lot of it works in cycles. So when you look at seasonality charts for things like wheat, and actually for oil also, because obviously take away the fundamental reasons in terms of wars and what have you, there's a pretty interesting seasonal pattern, clearly, right, with oil more used in winter months, and also in sort of peak vacation times in America, because people are, if they're traveling around the US, they'll be, consuming their fuel and petrol and what have you, and gas as they call it. So each instrument has its own idiosyncrasies, and you need to, tune in with them a little bit. But we're focused on oil at the moment. So we've started to frame our ideas, right? So same principle. We'll now go down and see if there's any levels that look interesting to us. So I'll start getting a little bit closer now to it. So we're now on the 4-hourly chart. And as you can see, the dailies have picked up the 4-hourly charts pretty well. So that's our frame. Are there any consolidation areas? Are there any breaks, right? So we can see here that when price, let's put this in, right? So we can see here, when price reached that level, it resisted, came back down into support. So I'm just putting these heavier block levels because we can use those as sort of potential areas where price may bounce off. So let's put that in. So we can see some consolidation here. I'm just going to try to capture. So here we've got a consolidation zone, right? So a bit noisy in the sense this big spike, but it closed back into this area here. So we can say to ourselves that this is an area where prices consolidated for a number of days. It broke out of that. And if I drag this across, we can see that this level now, from a breakout, is it going to retest this and go back to these levels? So, okay, so now we're going to start looking at how do we play this trade, right? So we've got our key areas in. If we go down to the hourly level, and now we can see again, right? We can see this consolidation area. We see a little gap here. So I'm going to move this to the top of the gap, right? So prices clearly are respecting this level now that we've got down to the hourly. I hope you can see that, because look, gap, resistance, came down to support, support, tested it one more time, came back to the top of this gap, broke out, retested it, and that's kind of where we are now. The fact that it's hit this level here, not easy to pick up a trade, right? So the two potential trading opportunities are, first of all, if we look at our bias, right? So let's start looking at our bias. Well, for me, the most recent move has been down, but really it's coming back to where it started. So again, this whole level, right, from 75.13 to 73 is kind of where price is okay at. Try to break out, try to get higher than the previous highs, rejected it. So now really we're looking to see if we can find any levels in here to either take it back into this area or take it back into this area. So if we now start drawing from an intraday perspective, let's draw a little consolidation area here. Right, so if we just again look at the candlesticks, look at how they're behaving, and try to get some sort of idea. So from this move up, right, it broke out of this consolidation area, which was the gap in this area here, broke away, showed strength, pulled back to to get some liquidity back, pulled and reversed. Even from an hourly perspective, came back down and hit this. Look how precisely it's hitting these important levels. We drew these important levels from higher time frames. Right now, as we can see here, and I might just change the color of this box so it doesn't get too confusing. All right, so we've got this area here now. And we'll be looking for a breakout and a retest. And I'll just change the color of this so we can have a look in isolation. Because when we do that, whoops, that's a terrible color. Let's change that to a different color. Let's just make it green. Gonna clash. Let's just do a really light color here. Hope you can still see that. So what we have, again, reiterating, because I'm trying to drill into you that the higher time frames are still important, even though we're trying to look for trades on an intraday basis. All these blocks, all these levels were generated, right, from higher time frames. So, for example, if we get a break on the downside, we'll wait for a breakout. Let me just point out what I'd be looking at, right? So if it breaks back to the downside, we had some consolidation here. So essentially, we'd be looking to go short and our target would be around here, basically. And if it goes on the upside, we'd be looking at that as a target, probably a little bit lower because, again, these candlesticks are giving us a story. The story is that this wick prices tried to push back up and then immediately came back down, right? So it's telling us something, weakness. However, it found support at this price here. And now we've got ourselves a little area that we're looking to see if we're going to get a breakout. So if, for example, it breaks out of here, we're looking for a retest. Again, this is the exact same thing I do all the time. And we're looking for it to get back up to sort of around there. If we get a breakdown, and this bar is important because we've got a small liquidity run here, right, where basically it came down, knocked out the previous low. And remember, this is hourly, right? So we're just keep into perspective the time frames, because if I go back to daily, right, it's very difficult. This is a weak candlestick. It's a rejection from a daily perspective, right? So prices hit that, came back down. So this level is also going to be important because the opens and closes have been around there. I don't want to draw too many lines, but let's just make sure that we take everything into account and we can then discard it or not. So clearly, right, from a daily perspective, any breakout, we might get a little bit of pressure here, but the fact that from a daily perspective, because we looked at the daily chart, it's more likely to come back into this consolidation zone rather than go up. because of what we've just looked at. This whole rejection candle here tried to push up, rejected, came back down. And right now is where we are today, right? So if we go back to the hourly, this is where we are right now. So if I was, and I don't trade oil anymore, traded a lot of oil contracts in the past. If I was looking to trade this, I would be waiting for clearer signals in terms of a breakout here. So if I now magnify this, let's see if we can find some smaller time frame indications. Remember, the weakness is what we're looking at because of the daily candle. The daily candle has sort of opened and closed in the lower sections of that candle. So we must be looking at some sort of weakness here. So my bias probably is to pull it down here. Now, the only thing that could change that, and this is the difficulty in trading oil, because it is so dependent, right, on producers, OPEC, Russia, and the demand from China. Is it waning because their production levels are less than they would have been expected? So does that mean they require less oil? And then you add to the confusion regarding, sanctions on oil and differential in prices for countries like India and Russia and the BRICS countries, as opposed to countries with sanction on Russian oil. So all these factors, you need to do a little bit of research. So it's not just about charts; it's about understanding, why oil and what factors will move oil. I'm still looking at it to come back into here, but again, any political noise, anything major that happens, we've just seen overnight, haven't we? Grain supplies in Odessa being, targeted. And this is not a political statement. It's just saying it's just a fact, right? That they targeted the wheat supplies. The wheat contract has now no longer in force with Russia and Ukraine. So all these things, believe it or not, impact the price of oil. So it's very difficult to use technicals on oil. I mean, I have, the way I've traded oil in the past is that I've used what they call crack futures. You buy one contract and sell the other contract, so it takes out some of the volatility. But really, you need futures contracts for that rather than CFD. So that's a whole different subject. Which, but if I personally wouldn't trade oil. So for the person who put the question in, very difficult to trade, not necessarily from a technical perspective, but from a fundamental perspective. It's influenced by factors that can change within a minute. And if you're in a trade, it can either go with you and for you, or it can go against you. And that's too much of a risk stroke gamble for me. I like to look at some, trends and try to follow some trends and use levels. Does that answer your question, by the way? It's a bit of a long-winded question. And what I can see here, certainly from an hourly perspective, from a daily perspective, it looks weak, right? Because this is a rejection candle. Where it closes today will be interesting. If it closes lower, than the body of this candle, then there could be a move down. However, there could be a wick fill, right? So it could try to get back up and retest this this resistance level. I hope that's kind of given you an idea on how I look at oil. I personally would stay away from it for now, because for all the things that I've just talked about, the fundamental unpredictability of supplies, etc. Right, is there any other pairs that you'd like me to look at? Got a few people in here today, so I'm going to just see if there's any more requests. If not, I want to go back to the pound, because I'm finding the pound pretty interesting at the moment. So let's just go back to the pound. GBP USD. And we started before the question, started to do our top-down approach. You'll see me doing exactly the same things as I did before, right? So weekly, it's Thursday, so it's looking like it might be creating, a double top, basically. So if the British pound closes from a weekly perspective, it's Thursday today, by tomorrow, then there'll be pressure for the pound to come down. But we all know, don't we, on Fridays, there can be quite big moves, and that might change this pattern completely. But let's just put the important levels in. Let's get a wider perspective, so we can see here, this is an important level from a weekly perspective, and also at the top here. You can see a little bit of a gap here. So, so that is going to be filled at some point, this area here. Consolidated, came back down. From a weekly perspective, that's, probably to do with the Ukraine thing again. So if we now go to daily, we'll start getting closer and closer to current price. And we can see here that we've got some more levels. I'll put them in another level here. I'm just going to move that, adjust it a little bit now that we're getting to the dailies. And just remember, what I try to do is try to capture as much movement around this. I don't go precisely to the top or the bottom. I look to see where closes were and where prices bounced off, bounced off, bounced off. Did the same thing here. We could probably adjust that a little bit more here. You can see it rejected that price, reject that price again, broke through it, came back, retested, bounced off it, and then went to the level that we just talked about from a weekly perspective, right? So if it closes like that or lower during the week, then there'll be weakness, but it's still some time to go before that happens. So now if I go down to, I think I've covered everything. Let's put another one here. Right, so this is resistance for a few days, came back, looks like it wants to come back and retest this. We can see some channels, but I'll put them on the 4-hourly rather than the daily. So let's put those in the 4-hourly perspective. And I'll just adjust this a little bit to capture more of this, these levels here. Resistance, 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 resistance. Is it going to come back and test this? Remember this on a 4-hourly perspective. Is it going to come back? Very important, because if price breaks this reaction, I think it will probably continue coming down and grab some, sorry about my lines here, these sort of levels here. So we might see like a move down to here. But because I think we have marked this up as a consolidation area, let me just put a rectangle here. I'll go back to orange in a second. So all this is consolidation. It broke out, hit this double top, if you want to call it. It's not quite a double top from a weekly perspective just yet, but if it does, then we're going to see it come back into this area here, and this will be the important level here, because if it breaks this, then it's going to come all the way back down, to test these levels here. Let's just put some of these levels in. However, if we put our channel tool on here, we're still on the 4-hourly, we can see here, oops, sorry, not too far out, I might have to get rid of that one. Squeeze it up a little bit. So we're still in the upward channel, and the important level here that we need to focus our minds on is this level here. This will be the key factor here, right? Because if prices continue coming down, breaks this low here. Let me magnify this so you can see what I'm talking about. Remember, these are 4-hourlies. We've got this level of consolidation, breakout of the consolidation, hit some levels here. It's coming back down, knocking out some of this structure here. You know, prices came down, merely continued going. If it knocks this out, right, because there's a fair amount of liquidity at this point here, the people that were going long, right, they're paused. Some people would have got out at this point here, whether they had stops from this, you know, entry point here or targets, because remember, if they had bought, they need to sell to exit the position. So that may have been caused by that. Then the continuation was strong until it hit the 31.24 level. But now, since then, it's sort of been coming down, bounced off this level here. So the key important areas now are going to be, is it going to come back and retest this, or is it going to stay? And if I can just look at some levels here, might be able to produce something. And again, this is kind of showing weakness in my mind. This level here. So we're now starting to create this consolidation here. Sorry about all the different levels, but these are what I'll be looking at. In fact, I might just get rid of this one. Oh, that's gone. Never mind. We can put them back in again. So we had a level here, didn't we? Let's go back to daily for a quick second. This will just take me a minute. Okay, let's. I won't have time to go back to all this, but what we're looking to do is look for a breakout based on, you know, the longer term time frames that we just looked at. We're looking at a breakout of this, created a low, created a high, consolidating. After this long move, it decided to pause. We had, this was the breakout of the channel, right? So it broke out. Buyers came in, the shorts got knocked out by the buy orders, pushed that price up, profit taking or exiting of the shorts continued going up, hit this level. We saw from our longer term times at this, from a daily perspective and weekly perspective, if it closes week from there, then we're looking to go down, but we're looking to see how price will behave around here. Now we can go to smaller time frames, right, and start looking at this from an intraday perspective. So if we now focus our energy and thoughts on this, right? So this is the consolidation, right? It came down low, high over the last few hours, and now it's in this range here. So we're looking for a breakout. We've got some support here now, because remember that was from our consolidation area, this breakout of this area here. I won't go back, otherwise I'll lose it. And I was drawing some channels, so let's just go back to 4-hourly. Let's put the channel back in. So it's broken up out this upward channel from an hourly perspective. This is this double top we talked about. The fact that it's broken out this channel is showing weakness. And here is our area. So obviously, if it comes back into this consolidation area, we'll be looking at some of these levels here as potential targets. But this downward move may have just been to grab some liquidity here. And if I pull this all the way across, shot up out of it, hit the top of it again, and it's now trying to figure out, is it going to continue going down or going up? So I'll be looking to trade outside these areas. This is now, for me, a consolidation area. So I'll be looking for a breakout from that high and that low. Yes, there's some intraday trades we can take in here and use these levels of support and resistance. Let's just, I don't usually trade down to smaller levels, but for those of you who do, you know, we're looking at these levels as resistance and support. And then we look for consolidation areas to see if there's a breakout of those, but then you're just capturing very small amount of pips. And I really don't, I try not to trade, you know, less than 1 hour. And I know some people go all the way down to 15 minutes. So that whole area that we looked at from a longer term perspective is covered by this low and this high. So anything out of here will be where we'll be looking to get, you know, long or short, but the intraday traders will be looking to see how they can stay within this range and take trades either, you know, from, you know, different types of tools. In fact, if I just look closely, let's see if we can find something. Right, so from this low here, we can see that prices moved up. Now I'm right down to 15 minutes, which is not something I'd like to do because a lot of this now is the sort of the Asian range, and London's only been open for, you know, 2 or 3 of these bars. So we're looking at this as being actually the Asian range when you think about it, right? So we'll be looking to see how prices break out of this, coincidentally, the Asian range. Although we haven't used timings for this, we've just used the high and low. If I put my cursor here, to move this tool that way, that's from yesterday, around sort of 4 o'clock to here, which was around 4 hours ago, basically. So this whole consolidation or range for intraday traders, they'll be looking to trade within this range, either long or short. I don't personally do that. I don't really go much below an hour. I hope that's been helpful. Not much going on actually in terms of you know, breakouts, but it's the same kind of procedure. I think you get my strategy right. Top down approach, put channels in, and then look for consolidation or breakouts for consolidation. That's kind of where I'm at the moment in terms of a trading strategy. Let's just go back. We've got about another 4 minutes. Are there any questions? Not much going on. I'm happy to take any questions about anything really, you know, see if I can help you. If there's no questions, we'll just finish up with the calendar, economic calendar. Just move this out of the way, just bear with me for a second. Yeah, so hopefully you're seeing my calendar. We've already looked at this today. It's Thursday, so let's see what's upcoming today. So we need to keep an eye on the Philadelphia Fed Manufacturing Index. If I click on that, last time round it had, you know, 100 pip movement on the euro dollar. So clearly we'll see some action around 1:30 London time. Okay, look, I think that's a wrap for today. Hope you found it useful. Hope you found it interesting. And, you know, as ever, you know, email me if you have any questions or ask questions here. And on that note, I wish you a great day and see you on Tuesday.